but we know we have 4 types of markets. We have perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. In this module, we'll cover the 2 extreme cases, perfect competition and monopoly. So today we should finish what we need to cover related to perfect competition and compare this with monopoly. With perfect competition, we understand that we have many sellers, many buyers, and firms in this market deal with identical products, which means there's no brands, or at least consumers don't care. They not worry about which firm produced the product. That's why we say we have identical products. With monopolistic competition, firms are able to differentiate their products with brand, with advertisement, etc. So they have some control on the price. They can slightly change the prices. With perfect competition, they have no influence on the price. So all firms in perfect competition or a perfectly competitive market, they have no influence on the price. We'll compare this today with monopoly, where a monopolist will have power or will have influence on the price. They can set the price actually. So compared to those firms working in a perfectly competitive market where they are price takers, the monopoly or a monopolist will have the power to set the price. We'll see this in a few minutes. But let's first do a recap on what we covered last week and see how this is different from the case with monopoly. And also today we'll look at the long run, because last lecture we didn't have a chance to look at the equilibrium in the long run in a perfectly competitive market. And then at the end we'll compare between these two. We'll compare the performance and efficiency of monopoly and competition or perfect competition. So as we said, when we have a perfect competition, we have many firms, large number of firms, large number of buyers, and identical products. So we have identical products in this market in perfect competition. Also, we know that there are no barriers, no restrictions to enter the market. So any business or any firm would like to enter this industry. In the case with perfect competition, they will have no problem. They will have no problem to do that. So they are able to enter the industry. The same thing with exiting or leaving the industry, they can do the same. So there are no barriers to enter or to exit from the market. This is perfect competition, okay? And we also know, so this is I didn't say anything new yet. So that's everything we all these we said already. All these points we covered already last week. Both sellers and buyers are well informed about the prices, so that for information. Also, we know that firms in a perfectly competitive market, they are price takers because they take the price as given. So how is the price set on the market? Is the interaction between all sellers. Remember, we have many sellers, large number of sellers, and large number of buyers. So there is no single buyer or single seller will have any influence on the price. So any single firm has no control on the price. So they take the price as given by the market, by the interaction between all these sellers and all these buyers in the same time. Then the price is set in a free market without any intervention. Remember, this is a perfect competition. So firms in this market are price takers. So they have to take the price as it is. They have to take the price as given. We saw last week that they can't change the price. If you increase the price for any reason above the market price, no one will buy your product. So you'll be able to sell nothing. You can't sell any unit. Okay? If you sell if you set your price less than the market price, we saw that there's no reason to do that because you can sell any amount at the market price. So there's no point to lower or to sell your product for any price less than the market price. So you see, so firms in this market, they take price as it is, so the market price is given to them, so that's why they are price takers. So they have no influence on the price. They can't change the price. And because of this, the demand curve that faces a single firm in this market is horizontal line. So it's perfectly elastic demand curve. Okay? So as I said, they can sell any amount at the market price. So if they produce 5, 10, 20, 100, so any amount that is gonna be sold at the market price. So that's why the demand curve that faces a single firm, so the firm demand curve is a horizontal line. Okay? And also this line represents the marginal revenue. So it's the price, the demand curve, and the marginal revenue. So what is the ultimate goal? What is the goal of these businesses? Exactly, they want to maximize profit. Thank you. So they want to maximize profit. So they're not just after making profits, they want to maximize these profits. So that is the goal for all firms. So it doesn't matter whether they are in a perfectly competitive market or in monopoly or monopolistic competition or oligopoly. So in all cases, that's why they do businesses. They want to maximize their profit. And we saw last lecture that to maximize profit or to calculate the economic profit, we look at the difference between the total revenue and the total cost. So you try to find the output level that make this distance or the difference between these two, the total revenue and the total cost, the maximum. So remember, that's what they want to do. So they want to maximize profit. So they have no control in the price. So they can't set the price. They can't change the price. So the decision they can make is related to how much to produce, the quantity to produce. Okay? So whether to produce more or less, that's what they can do. So what they trying to do, they're trying to produce the output that will maximize their economic profits. And as I said, the economic profit is the difference between the total revenue and the total cost. Also, we know that to do this, they need to produce the output level that will make the marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. So we could take this as a profit maximizing rule. And the same rule will apply to all firms regardless of what type of market they're operating in. So this will apply to a firm working in a perfect competition or monopolistic competition, oligopoly, or monopoly. So we could take this as a profit maximizing rule. So what they're trying to do is to produce the output level. Q here is the output level that will make these two equal, the marginal revenue and the marginal cost. So what is the marginal revenue? Does anyone remember? Yes, exactly. So as we said before, the marginal is the extra unit, yeah? Is the additional unit. So we're looking at the revenue here. So it can't be the cost. Okay, so we're looking at the revenue. So that is the change in the total revenue when you increase the amount you sold by 1 unit. So that's the extra unit. So when you sell 1 more unit, okay, so the change in the total revenue here is the marginal revenue. Then in a very similar way, we could define the marginal cost. So the marginal cost always, again, this is the extra, yeah? So that's the change in the total cost when we produce 1 more unit, that extra unit. So it's the cost of that extra unit. Okay, so marginal is always the about the extra unit, and it's always the change in the total. So in this case, when we look at the marginal revenue, so it's the change in the total revenue. When we look at the marginal cost, so it's the change in the total cost. Of course, when you increase your output or when you produce 1 more unit. So anyway, so they maximize profit when they find or when they produce the Q or the output level that will make these two equal. The marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. We also talked about the shutdown point. Does anyone remember what the shutdown point is? Shutdown point last week? Okay, so remember what I said about if the price doesn't cover the wages or what you pay for your employees or your workers, so that means you'll pay from your own pocket, yeah? So you pay this from your own pocket, so that you shouldn't be in the market. So let me say this in a more formal way again. So the shutdown point is the minimum point on the average variable costs. So I was talking about workers now and employees, so I'm looking at the variable input. So at that point, the minimum point on the average variable cost, if the price touch that point, it means that the price cover the variable cost. The variable cost here is the cost of labor. Okay, we agreed before, the week before, last week, that the variable input will be the labor, the fixed input. We're talking about short run, of course, when we talk about variable and fixed input. So the fixed input is capital, the variable input is labor. So when the price cover just the average variable cost, it means it doesn't cover the average total cost. So the average total cost is 2 components, is the variable and the fixed. So when it covers the variable, only the variable cost, so it doesn't cover the fixed cost. So that means at the shutdown point, at that point, if the price touch the minimum point on the average variable cost, it means the firm is making economic loss, and this loss is equal to the fixed cost. So they cover the variable cost, but they can't cover the fixed cost. So anyway, at that point, we know from before as well that the marginal cost curve cuts the average variable cost when the average variable cost is at the minimum point. So this is the point we're looking at here with the shutdown point. And as I said, the firm making economic loss, and this loss equal at the shutdown point equals the total fixed cost. For any price lower than this, it means it doesn't cover the variable cost or the fixed cost. So they should leave the market immediately. You can't pay your workers from your own pocket. That's what I said last week. So the workers here is the variable input. So you can pay that cost from your own pocket. If the price doesn't cover at least the variable cost, then you leave. That's why it's called shutdown point. Okay, but exactly at the shutdown point, you cover the variable cost, but you don't cover the fixed cost, and that's how much economic loss you make. Okay, I hope that is clear now. Okay, so now we'll move to perfect competition in the long run. So as I said, in the short run, a firm that operates in a perfectly competitive market can make economic profits, economic loss, or no profit or loss. So you could make zero economic profit. But what happens is, we know that there are no restrictions, there are no barriers to enter or to exit the market. Remember, we talk about perfect competition. So what does that mean? If in an industry, firms working in this industry making economic profits in the short run, this will be very attractive to other firms to enter this industry. Okay, so they would like to share these economic profits. So that means more firms will enter the market, and this will change the price, and we'll see how now. Okay, so that's one thing. If they make an economic loss in the short run, then in the long run, these firms will leave the market, will exit from the market. Okay, and this again will affect the price. And this adjustment, what happened to the price in these cases, will move us to the equilibrium in the long run in perfect competition. So let's now agree on that point. This is a very important point. So new firms enter an industry in which existing firms make economic profit. So as long as they make economic profit, this will attract more firms to enter this industry. Why they can't do that? There are no barriers. There are no restrictions to enter this industry. Okay, we agreed on that. That's one of the features of the perfectly competitive market, that there are no barriers, there are no restrictions to enter this such market. So if firms already making economic profit, they're enjoying economic profit, then this will attract other firms to enter this industry, and we'll see how this is going to affect the price. If firms making loss, then they will exit the market, they will leave the market in the long run. Okay, and again, this will affect the price. So let's look at the first case. With the first case, what we have here, we have if the price was 25. So at this price, firms making economic profit. Why? Can anyone tell me why they make an economic profit if the price was $25? How did I know they make economic profit? So what is the output level? How much this firm should produce? How do we know? Do you remember the profit maximizing rule? So they need to produce, or they should produce, the output level that will make the marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. So where is that? So here we go. If the price is 25, it's in the marginal revenue at the same time, and this is the marginal cost. So at this point, the marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. So then they should produce 9 units. So this is the revenue. So 9 times 25. So you sell 9 units for 25 each. So this area, all this area, is your revenue. Okay? So what about the cost? So if you want to know whether they make economic profit or economic loss, you need to compare the total revenue to the total cost. Let's look at the cost. So how much these 9 units cost us, or cost this firm? So you need to go up to the average total cost. So that means this is your cost, this area. So the difference, you see, the revenue exceeds the cost, which means they make economic profits. So what happens when firms make economic profit in a perfectly competitive market? This will attract other firms to enter the market. So how this is going to affect how the price is set in this market in perfect competition? It's set by the market. So a single firm will take it. So this on the left side, this firm will take it as given. So they can't change 25. But the price is actually set by the equilibrium in the whole market. So by the interaction between all buyers, this is the demand curve from all buyers, and this is the supply curve from all sellers. So the equilibrium in the market will give the price, or the price would be set as given to a single firm in perfect competition. And now that's why the price was 25. But now, given that more firms will enter the market, that will affect, so the number of firms or the number of sellers will change now. This will affect the supply curve. So given that we have more firms in the market, and the reason is because we have economic profits in this industry, the supply curve will shift to the right. So supply will increase. And now we will have a new equilibrium point. So this will keep happening. More firms enter to this industry until we reach that point here, where the price is exactly 20. Why 20? Because at this price, firms work in this industry will make zero economic profit. How do I know this? If you look at this point here, this is where the marginal revenue, or where the marginal cost cut the marginal revenue. So the output level here, or the profit maximizing output level, is 8 units. And at this point, the cost, you see that is the average total cost, exactly equal the revenue. So that means they make zero economic profit. So that's the main point here. So if we have economic profits in the short run, what will happen? More firms enter the market. This will shift the supply curve to the right. The price, this will put pressure downward on the price, and until we come to that point in the long run where we have only zero economic profit. So these economic profits will disappear, okay, because more firms coming to share these profits in the market, and then will put pressure on the price. So the price will decrease from 25 in this example to $20. So at that point, there is no economic profit. So the economic profit will disappear. Yes. Exactly. So what is the marginal revenue? I understand, but what is the marginal revenue? Remember, we just defined the marginal revenue. You actually did. You defined the marginal revenue like 2 minutes ago. So you remember how you defined it? Okay. So you said this is the change in the revenue, the total revenue, when we sell one more unit. Yeah. So it's the price of that extra unit. And because the all units are sold at the same price, so that's the marginal revenue of the next one will be the price, the market price. So what happened here is that when we have more firms entering the market, first the price change where in the market. So on this side, okay, we have now a new price. So let's assume that when firms enter the market, the price, the supply curve moves somewhere between these two. So that means they still make an economic profit, and that means more firms will enter. So only at that point where these firms no more firms will enter is when economic profit disappear. And where this happen? When the price exactly covers. So the price here is the same as the marginal revenue. So it's the same because the extra unit you will sell it for 20. So that's how way you define. So every time the total revenue will change by the same number, which is 20. So if you sell 9, you sell it for the ninth unit, you sell it for 20. If you sell 10, so what about the unit number 10? How much you're gonna sell it for? Is the same price. It's 20, because that the price is given by the market. You can't sell any amount by the market price. So every time whatever you sell, like the next unit will be at the same price. That's why the marginal revenue is horizontal line. And as I say, this is one of the features in perfect competition, and we'll see how this is different from monopoly in a few minutes when we move to monopoly. So with perfect competition, the price is the same as the marginal revenue, as I said, because you can sell any amount at that market price. That's why the demand curve is horizontal. And also, every additional or any additional unit you will sell at the same market price. So that is the marginal revenue. So the marginal revenue will be the market price. That's why you see this marginal revenue is a horizontal line. And this is determined by the market, not by the firm. So the firm take it as it is. So this will keep happening. New firms will enter the market as long as existing firms make an economic profit. And eventually, what we'll have here, well, the supply curve will keep moving to the right because we have more firms entering the market. So the supply will increase, yeah? And this will decrease the price now because there's more supply. We produce more now, so the price will drop. So the price will drop from 25 until 20. After that, no firms will enter the market. The market is not attracting any more firms because they making zero economic profit. So zero economic profit will attract no firms. No firms will be attracted by zero economic profit. So they were attracted before because we had economic profits. Until this economic profit disappear, or at that point, then that's the long-run equilibrium in perfect competition or a perfectly competitive market. And as I said, why there's zero economic profit? So you'll see that is the point at which marginal cost cut the marginal revenue, the new one here, and at the same point you will see this is the cost. This is the average total cost. So that's how much this will give, or how much revenue this will bring. Is this area? So what about the cost? Is exactly the same, because that is the average total cost. So which means we have no economic profit at that point. So what about if we move to the other case, when we have economic loss in the short run? So why I'm saying we have economic loss in this case, look at this here. You will see the price, or first we start with the quantity, how much they should produce. You look at the point where the marginal cost cut the marginal revenue. So here this is the point here. So this firm should produce 7. So the revenue is going to be this area. So 7, they sell 7 for $17 each. So this is the total revenue. What about the total cost? So how much 7 will cost this firm? You need to go up to the total cost curve. And that means the cost exceed the revenue. So they make economic loss. So what happened in this situation in a perfectly competitive market? In the long run, firms will exit from the market. So how this is going to affect the price? When firms exit the market, supply curve will shift. Is it going to shift to the right or to the left? To the left, exactly. So when more firms exit the market, then supply curve will shift to the left. Now we have a new equilibrium point. So the new price now in the market, which is 20. We went back, we are back now at that point where economic profit equals 0. Okay? So as long as we have economic loss, more firms exit from the market. And as these firms leave the market, the price goes up. Until we get to that point where economic loss disappear, and now the long-run equilibrium in perfect competition will be at that point, or 0 economic profit. And the reason for that, as I said before, because there are no barriers to enter or to exit from this market. So as long as there are economic profit, more firms enter the market. Economic loss, more firms leave the market, until we come to that point where equilibrium happens. Okay. Where economic profits equal 0. Okay, so now that was the case with perfect competition. Let's move now to monopoly. So what is monopoly? We talked about monopoly before. So remember, with perfect competition, we have a very large number of sellers, large number of firms. But with monopoly, we have how many? Exactly, one. So we have only one firm. But this is not enough, not just one firm. So this firm produces a product that has no close substitutes. So people cannot replace it with another product. Otherwise, it will be faced by competition from the substitutes. So one important thing now to remember, we understand we have a single seller in this market, but also the nature of the product they produce has no close substitutes. So that's why there's no competition. There's also one more thing about this market, which is the barriers. Remember, with perfect competition, we had no barriers, no restriction to enter the market. Monopoly, it wouldn't be a monopoly if other firms can enter the market. Okay? So if a monopolist making profit, why doesn't this attract other businesses, and then we're not having monopoly anymore? So that's the important feature here, or the important thing about monopoly. So they are not just one firm or one seller. They also deal with a product with no close substitutes, so they have no competition from the other firms that produce any substitutes, because they have no close substitutes. Also, there are barriers preventing other firms from entering this market, and that's a very important point. So as we said now, these are the key features for monopoly: no close substitutes, and there are barriers to enter this market. So these barriers prevent other businesses or firms from entering this market. So even if a monopolist making economic profit, other firms cannot come to share this profit with this monopolist. That's why they remain monopolists. So that's very, very important. As I said, if they have close substitutes, they will be faced by competition from others. But they have no competition here because they produce a product with no close substitutes. And we talk also, you should understand now the idea of the barriers, because if there were no barriers, if it was similar to the case with competition, then there's no monopoly, because more firms will enter the market if that monopolists make economic profits. So these barriers could be different types of barriers, could be natural barriers or ownership. So they own some economic resources that is just owned by them, by the monopolist, so others cannot have access to this type of resources. Or legal barriers, like they need permission or they need the license, that they can't get this license or this permission. So whatever the type of barrier, this is not what we're gonna be concerned about now, but it's very important to understand there are barriers. So there are barriers. That means no other firms will enter the market, because if they could, we're not having a monopoly anymore. So this is not going to be a monopoly anymore. It's going to be something else, depending on how many firms will be able to enter the market. So we move toward oligopoly, or even toward monopolistic competition, or different type of market. It's not going to be monopoly. So the question now, we know from perfect competition that firms cannot change the price. They take the price as it is with perfect competition. But what about the case with monopoly? So a monopolist can set the price. They make the price. They set the price. Okay? So they don't take the price as it is. So how are they going to price their product? That's a very important question then. So it's very important to understand this point. So a monopoly firm is able to determine the quantity and the price. So there are two strategies to set the price. They could have one price for all outputs, for all customers, So one price, and that's the case we're going to look at today. Or they could have a kind of price discrimination where they sell different units for different prices. Okay? So this is something we're not going to cover in this lecture. So what we're going to look at is the single price monopoly. So what does this mean? Single price monopoly, they sell each unit for the same price to all customers. Okay? Okay, so now we're looking at this case, a single price monopoly. So as I said, they set the price. They have control on the price. Okay? So it's very important to understand now they can decide what price to set for their product. But the important thing to know is they can't set both. They can't set the price and the quantity sold. So because they're not going to face a perfectly elastic demand curve, they're going to face a downward slope demand curve. So like a normal demand curve. Why? Because they produce 100% of the industry. So they actually face the market demand curve. Because they represent the industry. That's a monopolist. They produce everything. They produce 100%. Okay? So we have only one firm in the industry. So they could decide either the price or the quantity or the output. So for example, I don't have my pointer with me today. So let's say this mic. If I produce this mic, if I'm a monopolist and produce this mic, as a monopolist, I could say, well, I'm gonna sell this for £100. Well, it's up to me. I'm a monopolist, so I set the price. But you, my customers, they will decide how many mics to buy. So I can't control both. I can't say, well, I'm gonna sell this for £100 and you're gonna buy 50 mics. I can't do that. Okay? So as a monopolist, I either decide the price and then the market or customers or buyers will decide how many units to buy. So which is Q here, okay? Or if I want to sell 50 mics, then I need to lower the price. I need to set the price to sell this 50 units, let's say to £20, not £100. Okay? So as a monopolist, I don't control both together. I don't control the price and the quantity. So I control only one thing, one of these. So I said either set the price, and then you decide how many units to buy, or if I want to sell a specific amount of mics or whatever product I produce, then I need to set the price at that point on the demand curve, so you will buy this number of mics or whatever I produce. So anyway, so the important point here, as I said, because they face a downward slope demand curve. And the reason here is that this is the market demand. So you here represent buyers, all of you. I'm the monopolist. So the demand curve I face as a monopolist because I'm the only producer of these mics. And there's no other firm that produce mics except me, at least in this room. Okay? So in that case, the demand curve I face here, in perfect competition, we make this distinction between the market demand curve and the firm demand curve. So the market demand curve is a downward slope demand curve. The firm demand curve was, in perfect competition, was horizontal line, was perfectly elastic. But in monopoly, the demand curve I face as a monopolist is the market demand curve, is the downward slope one. So as I said, then if I want to sell a larger output, I need to lower the price. So if I want to convince you to buy 50 mics, the 50 mics I produce, or don't have 50 mics, but let's just pretend that I have. If I have 50 mics, and I want to convince you, or I want to sell these 50 mics, then I need to lower the price. I can't sell this at 100, for example. So that in that sense, I don't control both. I don't control the amount of mics I can sell and the price. So if I want to sell more mics, and then I need to lower the price. Why? Remember, the demand curve is downward slope demand curve. That's the market demand curve that I face here. And also, with perfect competition, the demand curve was the same. The price represents that demand curve as well, and that horizontal line is the demand curve and the marginal revenue. And the marginal revenue, that go back to your question, the marginal revenue was the same as the price. They were the same. So we saw that the horizontal line here represents marginal revenue and the price. But with monopoly, the marginal revenue will be less than the price. So that's why you will see the marginal revenue will be below the demand curve. So let's look at this. So this is the demand curve that monopolists face. It's a downward slope demand curve, and the marginal revenue is not the same as the demand curve. It's different now. It's below the demand curve. So the question now, how many units this monopolist should produce? Can anyone tell me? What is the profit maximizing rule? So that's what they're trying to do, yeah? Even monopolists, they want to maximize their profits. Yeah? So we agreed on that. So we have the same profit maximizing rule for all firms, or any, like, regardless of whatever type of market they operate in. So even with monopolies, they want to maximize profit, and to maximize profit, they need to produce the output level that will make the marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. So we don't have the marginal cost here, so we need to add the marginal cost. So let's look at let's look at this on the graph. Yeah. So that's what we have here. So again, that's the demand curve. It's a downward slope demand curve, and the marginal revenue is different now from the demand curve. It's not like the perfect competition. They were the same thing, demand curve and the marginal revenue. They were the horizontal line. So now we have the marginal revenue below the demand curve. And to see which amount to produce, we're looking at that point, the output that will make these two equal, marginal revenue and marginal cost. Where is that? It's here. So why is this point? Because this is where the marginal cost cut the marginal revenue. So this is the profit maximizing output. So how much the price at this point? So the price here is determined by the demand curve. So if you want to know how much, then you go up to the demand curve, and this will give you $14. So they should sell 3 units for $14 each to maximize profit. Okay? So what about the economic profit here? So the economic profit here, if you see, this is how much revenue they have. So this is 3 sold for 14 each. So all this area is the revenue. What about the cost? The cost for these 3, go to the average total cost. So that is the cost. So the difference between these two is how much profit they make. So this shaded area here, this is the economic profit, and it's $12. How do I know this $12? This is how much economic profit they make in this example. How did I know that? Exactly. So what is 4 here? You see? So what he said is 4, which is the difference here between that's the revenue, or that's the price, and that's the cost. So the difference here is 4 times 3 units. That will give you how much economic profit, which is actually is just the difference between this area here is the revenue, sorry, is the cost, and this area is the revenue, the total revenue. Then the difference between both, so remember, economic profit is total revenue minus total costs. Okay, so you could do it the same way as I said. So the difference here is 4 times 3, that would give us 12. Or you could say this is 3 times 10, that is the cost. 3 times 14, that is the total revenue. So this minus this, the total revenue minus the total cost, this will give you the economic profit. So anyway, so the question is this going to be the case in the long run? Because with perfect competition, we said if firms make economic profits, this will attract more firms to enter the market until the economic profit will disappear in the long run. So my question to you now, is this going to be the case? This monopolist now is making economic profits. Is this going to be the case in the long run? Or more firms will enter the market until these economic profit disappear? It's going to be the same. Why? Exactly, because they can't enter the market. Why the other firms cannot enter the market? Because there are barriers, and that's a very important feature in monopoly. Okay, because other firms cannot enter the market, they will continue enjoying making these economic profits. Okay, so that's very important. That's why I said it's very important to understand that with perfect competition we have no barriers to enter the market, and that's why in the long run equilibrium will have zero economic profits. But with monopoly, because there are barriers to enter the market, then if a monopolist is making economic profit, it's difficult for other firms to enter the market to share this profit with them. So it's going to be the situation. So this situation will continue even in the long run. Okay? Okay, so let's move to the efficiency now, the last point in this lecture. So we want to compare the performance with these two. Perfect competition against monopoly. So we know from before that resources are limited and we need to be efficient when you use these resources. So resources are used efficiently when no one can be made better off without making someone else worse off. So this is something hopefully we know from before. Okay? So what we need to do now is to look at both cases, monopoly and perfect competition, and see which one is more efficient. So this situation, or efficiency, we achieve efficiency if the marginal social costs equal the marginal social benefit. And again, this is something we covered before. So nothing new in this so far. So this is perfect competition now. So in perfect competition, the supply curve is the same as the marginal social cost, and the demand curve is the same as the marginal social benefit, which means that intersection point here is where efficiency happens. So the outcome here should be efficient, because at this point the marginal social cost equal the marginal social benefit, and the allocation of resources here is efficient. So let's compare this. Let's see at the surplus as well. Do you remember the consumer surplus and the producer surplus? What is the consumer surplus? Do you remember the difference between the value and the price? Okay. Do you remember, I don't have the pointer with me. That was the example I gave. So you remember when I said with the clicker or the pointer I use, when I said I'm happy to pay up to £50 to get this because I use it in my lecture and that's how I value this product. But I bought it for £20. So £20 here is the price. £50 is the value. So that's how much I value it. Okay? So the value, we measure the value as the maximum price you're willing to pay for this product. So in that lecture, if I take you a few weeks back, so that's exactly what I said. The pointer or the clicker I had in my hand, I don't have it unfortunately today. So I am happy to pay up to £50 to get it. That's how much I value it. You might give it different value, this is up to you. But for me it's important, and that's why I'm happy to pay up to £50. But when I bought it from the market, I got it for £20. So £20 here is the price, the market price. So how much surplus I made here as a consumer is the difference, yeah? So it's 50 minus 20. So that's £30. So that's the idea of the consumer surplus. So the consumer surplus is the difference between the value, which is the maximum price you're willing to pay for the product, and the market price. So anyway, in this case, with perfect competition, the total surplus, which is the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus, is the maximum. And this is something we showed before, by the way. So in this case, as I said, this is the equilibrium. This is where we have efficient allocation of resources, and both the sum of consumer surplus and producer. You see, that's consumer surplus, so that's the maximum, that's the value of this product, is the maximum price they're willing to pay for this product, and this is the market price. And the difference between these two, which is this area here, this is how much surplus I make as a consumer. For producers, this is they're not gonna produce if the price is not for any price less than 17. So they're happy to sell or to start producing at 17, but in the market they sell actually for 20. So the difference here is the producer surplus. And with competition, the sum of these two is the maximum, and I'll show you why now when we look at a monopoly. So also we know that in the long run, in perfect competition, there will be zero economic profit. So this is the marginal revenue, and that's the marginal cost. So this is the profit maximizing output level, and at that point, here is the average total cost, and that's also the long run average cost. So let's look at the monopoly case. So with monopoly, notice the difference here. The supply curve represents the marginal cost. Let me take you back to this one. Look at the supply curve here. What the supply curve represents here is the marginal social cost. So it represents the marginal cost for the whole society, not for the monopolist, not for the producers. So with the monopoly, it represents the marginal cost for the producer, not for the society. So that's one thing. So it's the marginal cost. And as you see, where's the equilibrium here, or where's the profit maximizing output, is where the marginal revenue equal the marginal cost. So that's the point. Okay? Sorry. Yeah, so that's the point here. So they produce QM here. That's the quantity we produce in monopoly, and the price is PM. This price. So to compare this with perfect competition, you will see with perfect competition, because the marginal revenue will be the same as the demand curve and also the price. So you will see that with perfect competition, we'll produce QC, which is more than QM. This is Q competition, and the price C. So what happened here with monopoly? They produce less and they charge more. So when we have monopoly, they produce less and charge more. So what happened to consumer surplus? Where's consumer surplus in this case with monopoly? Where's the consumer surplus? What is the consumer surplus again? Exactly, it's the difference between the value and the price. What is the value? Is the maximum price. Okay, so that's the maximum price. Where's the price with the case of monopoly? Is this one. So this is the consumer surplus, is this area. Let's compare this with the consumer surplus in the case of competition. So where's the consumer surplus here? with competition is all of this. So what's happened here to the consumer surplus if we have monopoly? So this is the competition. So what's happened with monopoly? So let's look at monopoly. Look at this. We have less, so the consumer surplus is smaller compared to all of this. The producer surplus now became all of this. So there's a redistribution of the surplus from consumers to producer. So this area here was consumer surplus if we have competition. But now because we have monopoly, it became producer surplus. And also this area is a deadweight loss, which means this is a loss for the whole society. So let me just sum up the last point when we compare between the competition and monopoly. So with competition, with monopoly, they produce less and charge more. So they charge higher prices and produce less. So what happened to the surplus? First of all, we have the deadweight loss, which means this is an area that we, the whole society, lose. And also there is a redistribution of the surplus from consumers to the monopolists. And that is the main point here. Okay? I hope this is clear. So today